Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm Vic Watson, one half of Bay Tales, the better half. Simon Bewick is behind the scenes tonight, keeping all of those digital plates spinning, just as well. I'm not drinking tonight, eh? Tonight, we are here to celebrate the publication of the brilliant new novel from Louise Candlish, The Heights. Just so you know, there is a chat facility, usually along the bottom of your screen somewhere, but if it's not there, you click on 3 dots and it should appear. If you'd like to chat to everybody tonight, please click all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see your messages. We also have the Q&A button, so I'll be asking Louise some questions, but you guys also have the opportunity to ask a question to Louise tonight. If you would like to ask a question to Louise, please pop it in the Q&A somewhere along the bottom there, and I will endeavour to ask it if I can. So, allow me to introduce our very special guest. Louise Candlish is the Sunday Times best-selling author of 15 novels. Her 2018 thriller, Our House, which has sold over 250,000 copies in the UK to date, was a #1 bestseller in paperback, ebook and audiobook, as well as winner of the Crime and Thriller Book of the Year at the 2019 British Book Awards. That deserves a ooh. It's currently being filmed in South London, starring Martin Compston, Tuppence Middleton and Rupert Penry-Jones. Those People, her 2019 release, was a #2 Sunday Times bestseller in paperback. The Other Passenger, last year's cracker, is a Sunday Times bestseller in paperback and is already under option for a feature film with Moving Image Productions. The Heights has already been optioned for TV. Louise lives in South London with her husband and daughter, and we at Bay Tales are absolutely delighted to have her here with us tonight. So everybody, please, huge round of applause for Louise Candlish.
Hi.
Good evening, congratulations.
Am I live and audible? Oh, good.
Sure, let's say that. Okay, I have a question to start off with. I've read The Heights, I've been really lucky. But for those of us, or those of them in the audience who haven't, can you give us a brief introduction to The Heights? What the reader could expect, perhaps?
Of course, yeah. It's a revenge thriller or a revenge drama, a kind of page-turning, twisty book in the style that lots of my recent books have been. And I think it came as a reaction to the book I'd written before. So many people here will have read The Other Passenger, which was a tale of 2 child-free couples who, let's just say, were quite self-absorbed and not remotely interested in family issues or, you know, even each other, to be honest.
Yes, quite.
And so after that rather empty-hearted book, which I absolutely loved writing, I felt the need to come back to something a bit more emotional and family orientated. But I've written a lot about families before and the various dilemmas and, you know, jeopardies they can find themselves in. And so it took me a little while to think of a new angle. And I wanted to, because I knew I wanted to write about revenge, I needed a good rivalry, you know, a good sort of vendetta or a, you know, relationship at the heart of the story. So I decided to do a mother, an overprotective, neurotic mother with a teenage son, he's her golden boy, and she develops an antipathy and then an obsessive hatred of his best friend, who's called Kieran. So yes, this is a revenge story, and without giving too many spoilers for those who don't know anything about it, a tragedy occurs, and Ellen's reaction to it is perhaps not the same as yours or mine would be. It's very extreme, leading her into criminal activity.
Excellent. Would you be happy to give us a little taster of it?
Yeah, of course. I'll read a very sort of shortened version of the first scene. So Ellen is a lighting designer. It's a couple of years after a terrible incident has occurred in her family, and she's kind of getting her life back together. She's got a small roster of clients, and so in this opening scene in the book, she is visiting a new client. Kieran Watts had been dead for over 2 years when I see him standing on the roof terrace of a building in Shad Thames. It's October 2019, a Monday that should be unremarkable. For those who don't know the area, Shad Thames is a historic parcel of riverside London just southeast of Tower Bridge. Think step back in time wharves with winches and walkways and cobbled alleys running red with the blood of bygone crimes. Okay, that's in poor taste. I apologise. For those who don't know the man, Kieran Watts is the monster who destroyed my life, whose actions will torment me till my dying day, and perhaps even beyond. I wouldn't put it past him. He's the reason I'm writing this. He's the reason I'm here. As I once said to my daughter Freya, not missing the look of revulsion on her face, I will never forgive him. I mean it, never. So, I'm in Shad Thames for work. It's been raining overnight and the riverside palette is all soot and stone, rust veining the dark painted ironwork. My new client is called Selina, who lives on the 5th floor of Jacob's Wharf, one of the east-facing warehouse conversions overlooking St Saviour's Dock. Though beautiful, the apartments have inconveniently small windows, calling for lighting expertise beyond what your average Sparky will dispense. This first meeting is for me to get a sense of her lifestyle and personal aesthetic. But you don't need to hear about that. Rest assured, I'll light her beautifully. What's important here is what happens after the consultation. We're sitting at her breakfast bar by the window with cups of espresso when she says, "You wouldn't need your trickery up there, would you?" And she gestures to the building directly opposite. It's a slender, modern structure slotted between two warehouses. Each floor has a large lozenge-shaped window overlooking the water, with a second full-height one running up the building in a reflective stripe. The top flat has a roof terrace that spans the full width of the building. There must be a great view of Tower Bridge from that terrace, I say. It's an unusual building, isn't it? It's the tallest in Shad Thames, I think, she says. And he's the king of the castle, look. Craning to glimpse the man who's come out onto the terrace and stands at the clear glass balustrade. I find that my first thought, as it always is when I witness someone poised inches from a sheer drop, is he's going to throw himself off. He's going to lean forward, look down, and hear the call of the void, exactly as I would. Then he'll jump. I say as much to Selina, and she exclaims in horror, "But why would he want to jump?" Not him, me, if I was standing there where he is. Don't worry, it's nothing to do with feeling suicidal. It's a condition. They call it high place phenomenon. Not everyone has it. I gesture to our man on the roof terrace, as still and poised as an elite diver about to go for gold. He obviously doesn't. Well, it wouldn't be the best place to live if he did, Selina says, as he turns and walks the length of the terrace to its river-facing corner. That's when it happens. The impossible, the grotesque. There's a self-consciousness in the way this man lifts his chin, an exaggerated bounce to his step that I recognise, that makes me put my hand to my mouth to muffle a gasp, my heart punching a savage rhythm in my chest. It's him. So that's Ellen's first, well, that's her reintroduction to a man she knows pretty well and thought was out of her life.
And he's made such an impact on her life in so many ways, from almost the mundane right up into the worst thing imaginable. Did you have any kind of prototype in your mind in terms of good person, bad person? Because in my mind, I just kept thinking he's the Joker to her Batman. I don't know why.
Well, she would love that image. She'd love that analogy. I don't know. I mean, I was talking about this with a sort of early reading group recently, and I'm not really sure whether he was just the wrong man at the wrong time, and she was just ripe to create an enemy out of someone who had got closer to her son, who she adores, closer than she is. And it's, you know, a kind of really dysfunctional development in what's normally a kind of natural independence of a, you know, a teenager, because they're in there, for those who don't know, they're in the sixth form, they're 16, 17, and they're starting to party and be rebellious. Or continuing to party, as the case may be. So yes, I think, but equally, you know, it's not all in her mind. He is horrible. And so I did imagine him as, you know, someone who's physically very unattractive, but in personality very charismatic.
Yes.
Which is a really unusual combination. He's not getting by on his, you know, handsome looks, which is actually what Ellen's son is doing,
Yeah.
Lucas. Kieran is an unattractive prospect, and he comes from, you know, a very troubled background. He's been in care. So, you know, there's a lot of ambiguity and guilt around the way this very affluent school handles him. They feel they can't complain about his bad behavior because it looks bad, because, you know, they should be being generous hearted towards him. So it's complex when they meet. But her reaction to him is something that I think we probably only feel very rarely in life, all of us, just an instant loathing, like an animal, a visceral animal sort of antipathy. And so it's quite hard for her to fight that. She's felt it instantly. He has responded by being extremely rude to her. And, you know, she's used to quite well-mannered kids coming in and out of her house. She thinks she's a great mum and, you know, someone who would be popular with her kids' friends. And it's a shock to her to be treated in this quite brutal way.
I've got to ask you, what inspired you to make her a lighting designer?
I think initially well, first of all, I needed something that she could do in her own business, because she's not, as someone who is suffering tremendous grief, she can't really hold down a full-time office job. Yeah. So it needed to be something she could sort of dip in and out of. She could control her client list. She could take on work when she felt healthy enough to do it. Yeah. And I think initially I was going to play more on the lighting element, because this is a story of light and dark, you know, right from, you know, the buildings in Shad Thames are notoriously dark and moody. And, you know, they're from, you know, the olden days of the Thames, you know, with smoky, you know, polluted days and sewage in the water, and that contrasts very much with her lovely home in, you know, sunlit suburbia. So I was going to make more of the lighting imagery, but in the end, that was something that sort of fell by the wayside. So she could have been something else, but I think we need to know that she's quite stylish. She's quite Hitchcockian, and she sees herself that way as well, partly because of this fear of heights she has. And, you know, she bleaches her hair. So she, you know, when she meets her husband, Justin, he immediately sees her as a kind of Kim Novak figure in Vertigo when they're talking about her high place phenomenon. And so, you know, it felt natural that she would do something quite artistic, but she could have been an artist. She could have been an illustrator. But something creative, I think, where she's aware of appearances.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome our first guest tonight, and that is Mr. T.M. Logan. T.M. Logan's thrillers have sold more than 1 million copies in the UK and have been translated for publication in 22 other languages. He is the author of 5 novels, including The Holiday, The Catch, and Trust Me, which is published in paperback today. Happy publication day, Mr. Logan.
Thank you.
And welcome. I'm going to hand over for you to ask Louise some questions now, if that's all right.
Great. First of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I loved the book. Really enjoyed reading it. So I wanted to ask, one of the things I really enjoyed about it was how much I felt I could identify with the characters. I felt like I knew them. I sort of know them in my kind of everyday life, and, you know, I sort of identified personally with lots of the things that were in there. And I wondered which of the characters did you identify most with yourself, and why?
Well, just so everyone knows, Tim and I were just discussing before the event that we both have teenagers. And so I know why you identify and why I identify, because we have, you know, we've just been through this phase of parenting where they're about to head off. So yes, like you, I did identify with Ellen and Vic, the parents of Lucas. But I think because Ellen is, her reactions are not at all how I would react. I mean, she emotionally, I share her reactions, and in a kind of knee-jerk way where, you know, you fantasize about revenge, you know, fantasize about strangling that, you know, annoying bad influence on your gorgeous child, and you know, you'd love to see them, you know, sort of expelled and relocated to another part of the UK. But she acts on these emotions in a way that I don't recognize really. So that was the fun of writing her, was about exaggerating that and actually following through with those awful dark fantasies that I think we all have, but maybe don't admit to very many people. But I think I don't know about you, but I identified more with Vic, because he is a kind of foil to her extremism. And this is the estranged, no, he's the ex-partner. So he's the father of Lucas. She's married to Justin, and Vic is the father of Lucas, and they had him when they were very young, in their early 20s, just out of university. So I think I identify more with him because he presents more of a kind of civilized face. He's got the feelings, but he knows that it's better to forgive. It's there will be punishment for Kieran for what he's done, and that has to be accepted, for what it is. So I think his response is closer to how I would respond. Having said that, he's not perfect, and his own machinations are more covert. So whereas Ellen is wearing her emotions on her sleeve and not really doing much to conceal her vengeance, I think he's a bit more devious. So maybe I'm more devious. I don't know. The main character in Trust Me is called Ellen as well, isn't she?
Yes.
There's quite a few parallels.
It must be the year of the Ellens. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
and I haven't read your book where the father is obsessed with the partner of the child. So we have that in common as well. I can only imagine how he resolved that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some sort of a few sort of common strands there, but I like Vic as well, because Vic kind of, like you say, he sort of finds himself stuck in the middle, doesn't he? So he's got Ellen on one side, and he's got his own thoughts and emotions, and he's got, he knows the potential ramifications of what she's thinking about and planning, and he's trying to both agree with her and also kind of save her and save the situation at the same time. And I think he was quite a fascinating kind of character, because he's trying to sort of play multiple roles in different stages of the story.
He is, yeah, and he's slightly out of his depth. I mean, what he does, without sort of giving away any spoilers, what he does is, there's a lot of hope attached to it that Ellen isn't going to find out. So yeah, he's a little bit naive. No, he was really fascinating to write, and for those who don't know, the book is structured as a sort of true crime memoir written by Ellen, and it's about to be published, and she's being interviewed by the Sunday Times for publication, and so she's controlling the narrative for at least the first third or half of the book, and you don't know that you're ever going to hear anyone else's point of view. And so but you do eventually get inside Vic's head as well, and that's when you start to see this kind of other version of the truth, and also the way that he feels he knows how to manage her, because she is so neurotic, and whether or not he actually can manage her. So yeah, they were both really interesting to write, actually, and a little bit like with Bram and Fee in Our House. Even though they can never ever be partners again, they still love each other. They still have that residual love for each other, and so there's some things he can do and say that her husband Justin probably can't.
Yeah, I did identify with Ellen myself quite a lot, to be honest, to a sort of a kind of a worrying extent, I think. And I kind of had to sort of pull myself back a few times, thinking, well, actually, you shouldn't be,
Yeah.
Thinking, but
I agree. I feel like she goes crazy, so we don't have to. I really feel that that I think it could be quite a cathartic experience for parents to read. But can I ask you a question, Tim?
Okay, yeah, sure.
My question is, The Holiday's being filmed, isn't it? Or has it just been filmed?
It was filmed.
Give us an update, because it's so exciting.
So it was filmed in April and May. So it was a 7-week shoot in Malta. The book itself was set in the south of France, but they filmed it in Malta for various reasons, and COVID related, I think. And it's in post-production now, and it'll be out as a 4-part drama I think towards the end of the autumn. They haven't got a confirmed date yet, but probably October, November, or possibly into the first part of next year on Channel 5. So yeah, it's very, very exciting.
Amazing. And who's in it? Who are the main parts?
The main character is Jill Halfpenny.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, she's really good, and she's now now when I think about the book and I see it on the shelf, and I just think about, I've got her face in my head. So, but she does really kind of, because I've seen some of the rushes and the trailers and stuff, and she does really, really encapsulate the character and, you know, the things she's going through. So yeah, it's exciting.
How fantastic. Congratulations. We'll be watching.
Thank you.
Get the record on now. Jill Halfpenny, of course, is from the Northeast, so we always have to say that.
I always remember her in the Catherine Tate show, in that one sketch with the posh mum. Oh my God, she was so good. She was the nanny.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations again on publication today.
Thank you, and congratulations, Louise, and yeah, good luck with the book. And I loved it.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for being a special guest.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. So what we're going to do now is open up a competition for members of our audience to be in with a chance of winning a fantastic book bundle, not just the new one, no, a Louise Candlish book bundle containing a copy of Our House, Those People, The Other Passenger, and The Heights. Amazing. And that's thanks to Simon and Schuster. So if you can email baytales20@gmail.com, Simon will be putting this in the chat, I'm sure. Put The Heights as the subject line and answer this very simple question. It'll be simple if you were listening. What is Ellen's occupation? So I'll just leave that there. We'll remind you before the end of the event. And now we have our second guest, the lovely Lisa Jewell. She's an NYT and Sunday Times #1 best-selling author of 19 novels. Wow, you ladies are on fire. Lisa has sold over 5 million copies of her books worldwide, and her latest novel, The Night She Disappeared, is on sale in hardback right now. Everybody welcome Lisa Jewell.
Yeah. Hi, lovely Lisa.
Hello, lovely Louise. Oh, it's so lovely to see you, and congratulations on your big, exciting day.
Thank you so much. And congratulations to you too, because what Vic didn't say is that The Night She Disappeared is #1 right now in the hardback chart.
It will be in the hardback charts in the Sunday Times this week. But yeah, #1, very exciting.
Fantastic.
And if there's anybody down there in the participants who was responsible for buying a copy, thank you very much. I'm sure there's lots of overlap between Louise's books and my
I think
books.
so, yeah. Well, I certainly have bought a copy.
Oh, you didn't need to.
I was sent one, but I also bought one.
So I'm supposed to be asking you questions. I feel like I'm supposed to be asking you questions about The Heights, but I've got 2 very random questions that have got nothing to do with The Heights, because I feel like lots of other people are going to be asking you all sorts of things about that. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, and this is something that I love about all of your books, and I'm a massive, massive fan of yours, as you know. You're my auto-buy writer, is your specifically your houses are magnificent, and they take center stage in all your books. Your locales are always really, really strong, and your buildings. In fact, I would say my favorite setting for any of your books was the Ile de Ré, the little B&B. I still feel like I was in that B&B on the Ile de Ré. I can't remember the name of that novel. What was the novel called?
That was, well, actually there have been 2 with an Ile de Ré setting. One was The Disappearance of Emily Marr, where she is she's hiding on the Ile de Ré in a little dark house down a cobbled alleyway. And then, but you might be thinking of The Second Husband, where he whisks the girl away. No,
I'm definitely thinking of Emily Marr.
Okay.
I didn't know there was another one, and I honestly, I still feel like I've actually been to the Ile de Ré, having read that book. It was so overpowering, the whole sense of place. So the question I wanted to ask you, having over your long career created some incredible houses and communities and villages and streets, and now a building. Now we have this incredible building in the Heights. Which is your favourite?
I did really I really liked the house in The Other Passenger, and I wasn't intending to describe it or allow it to take center stage, because I had just come out of 2 books that were about a house, Our House and Those People, where, you know, everyone's interiors are described and we know the, you know, the number on the street that they live at, etc. So I thought, right, this is about the boat, this is about commuters, this is about the river, this isn't about a house. But of course I ended up really falling in love with the house that that Claire and Jamie live in, which is a Georgian house on a garden square in a sort of Greenwich style area. It's a fictitious area, but it sort of strongly resembles Greenwich. And so, you know, at the top of the house, they've got this, you know, gorgeous master bedroom suite with a glimpse of the Thames. And, you know, they've got this private garden out front where, you know, only the residents have a key. And you know, it's Georgian, so it's, you know, it's beautiful and filled with original features and all the kinds of things that their younger friends, Kit and Melia, who become, you know, sort of rampantly envious of them, all the kinds of things that, you know, they would love to have in their house. And by contrast, they live on the wrong side of the tracks in a rented flat that they hate, and they haven't even put curtains up at the windows. And so, yeah, I ended up thinking far more about that house than I intended to. And it was just very real to me.
Interesting, because it was the focus of the book, yet it's the one that you feel the strongest sort of...
Yeah, no, I really feel that. And I don't know if you feel that, because we have that in common, that we both have these lovely houses, often with affluent families.
Yes.
And you kind of, the homes are so important to people, and property is, you know, the obsession of our age, that you can't really describe their status and their emotions and their, you know, the way they fit into the community without knowing how nice their house is.
It's 100%. It's, yeah, absolutely 100%. Yes. And, you know, when I take my dog out for a walk in the evenings, that's kind of my favorite time of day to take her for a walk, because everybody's lights are on, so I can see inside their houses. I just want to know what people's houses look like. So to have the opportunity to either read a book like yours, where you bring these houses so fully to life that I almost feel like I'm in them, or to be able to write about them myself, is just, it's just super fun.
No, I completely agree. And I think it's really, I'm like that as well. I'm always nosing in people's windows, and absolutely love it when they don't close their blinds, so I can gaze in. But I like seeing the pictures on the walls. I like seeing the lamps, the rugs, the sofas. Yeah, I like seeing, you know, what wine they've got.
Exactly. Oh, I love all of it.
It's terrible.
So the other question I wanted to ask you, and this is an awful question to ask you, and nobody in all my years of being interviewed has ever asked me this question, but I give you permission to throw it right back in my face if you wish. It's a terrible question to ask you, but I think it's really interesting. If you had to cull one book from your book backlist, which one would it be?
That is a brilliant question. There's a few that I would cull.
Oh, I thought you would,
because no, I probably won't say them, because I think I'd get in trouble with the publisher. But I think certainly some of my early ones, this is if I had to choose. I mean, they all mean something to me. But I do feel like, and I don't know if you feel the same, although it was different because all of your books have been very successful right from the start. But I had a series of very unsuccessful books. And so it did feel like I was sort of like learning how to write in publication. And perhaps, you know, books that, had I been in a writing workshop like Ellen in the Heights, I might have, you know, they might have developed differently. So they feel quite unambitious, I think, because I was kind of learning as I went along. So I think some of my early ones, I probably, you know, if I had to wave goodbye, it would be one of those. Okay. And certainly people who come to my later books, if they want to go back and read the whole backlist, say they, you know, a lot of people thought Our House was my first book actually, and it's been, you know, very nice for them to discover there were 10 before that. But I do feel like I have to say to them, remember that the early ones aren't as complicated as this, and they, you know, they're not as good. And I often sort of give them labels, and I'll say, you know, this one was a comedy, this one was more of a family drama. Don't go expecting this, you know, because we're now in the era of the twist, aren't we? And so readers love twists, expect them. And, you know, once you're known for your revelations, as I think we both are, I think it's quite hard to you know, to go back to something simpler. And so I will always say, if you're reading one of my early books, there's no twist, and you know, there's no rug pull at the end. They're quite linear. There's no complicated structure. There's no meta elements that have been introduced latterly. So yeah, I think I could, Carl. Could you?
It sounds like you could just get rid of half of them. It's a really difficult one, because you know that the one I would choose is one that might be one of my readers' favourite books of mine. It really meant something huge to them at the time that they read it. But no, I have a very specific book that I wish I'd never written, and I'd be really happy if it just sort of shuffled off and just disappeared, which is After the Party, which was my sequel to Ralph's Party.
Oh, really? But that was a huge success.
No, it actually wasn't. And I think maybe that's part of it. That sort of marked the beginning of a sort of decline of my sales. Things got tougher for me for a few books after that one, because I don't know. That's my book. That's my that's the one. I put it in the bin, that one, if I had to take
Was that your idea to write that sequel?
It was my idea, but I know you're the same, I never write cynically. I never write because I think a film company might snap it up, or because I think it's what my publishers would like me to write. I'd write because this is the thing that I really fancy writing, spending a year of my life doing. But with that one, I was feeling a little bit like my sales had gone down a bit, and that my publishers were slightly losing interest in me. And I came to them with this, I could always write a sequel to Ralph's Party just to make them love me a bit, really. Yeah, and then they were like, oh yes, do that. And the minute they said, oh yes, do that, I thought, I really don't want to do that. And
that's so interesting, because you are writing a sequel again, aren't you, right now?
But this time it's because I had to, I needed to. Yes, it was there, and I wanted to, rather than me thinking that somebody else would like me to.
Yeah, and I completely see, because The Family Upstairs, I think, was one of those books where, you know, you left with a burning desire to follow those characters to their the next step.
Yes, so did I.
Very exciting for us fans of The Family Upstairs. Does it have a title yet?
It has a working title, which it won't get to keep because it's a bit quirky working title. But no, don't know. I don't know what we're going to call it, but it's not going to be The Family Downstairs.
No. Family next door, family in the basement. Can I ask you one question?
Yes, have we got time?
Have we got time?
Yes, we have.
I just wanted to say that, you know, yet again, you've got a #1 bestseller, and it feels like every book and in every format of yours is, you know, straight in at #1, probably on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's incredible and so rare in a writer's career. And so I just wondered, do you still feel the same when you get news like you got the news on Tuesday? And how do you celebrate? Because you must have champagne corks popping left, right, and centre.
It's such a good question, but I must say I've never gone straight in at #1 in America. I've only been #1 in America once, and that was with a book that took 3 years to get there.
Oh, okay, right.
Yes, it was published in 2017.
you understand.
It finally creaked up to #1 in 2020. So that was a bit of an anomaly, that one. And yeah, I don't normally go beyond like number 10, which is
still fantastic.
Not diminishing that one bit, but no. So I haven't had that moment in America yet. I haven't had that. Whoa, you're #1, straight in at #1 thing, and maybe that will happen, and maybe it won't. Who cares? But yeah, in the UK, it's funny. I was talking about this earlier. The first time it happens, it's your tick list. Your tick list.
Yeah.
#1. I've had a #1 novel tick, and then you almost don't. It's nice to recreate it, but you don't feel you need to. It's like a thing you've done, and you'll forevermore be a #1 best-selling novelist. So I now feel more ecstatic on behalf of my publishers when it happens, because they're the ones in the background doing all the work. They're really, really, I know what they do behind the scenes to get that book in the bookshops and to get readers talking about it and what have you. So yeah, so it's sort of flipped from being this amazing thing that's happened to me to being this amazing thing that justifies all my publishers' hard work. So it is wonderful. It is wonderful. The whole thing is wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because you're right. We're just fronting this, aren't we? There's a huge army of people who put their hearts and souls into, not just the publishers, but, you know, the agents as well. You know, we've got amazing. We share an agent in Curtis Brown, and you know, there's so many people there who help make it happen. And it's really, really exciting for the whole team, isn't it? And so,
yes, it
yeah,
really
I know
is.
what
It
you
means
mean.
so much to every last person who's
Yeah.
been part of the publication process. So yeah, it's a win for the team. It's wonderful.
Yeah, for you, it's just another glass of champagne
Just
on
another
a Tuesday evening.
It's a valid reason to have Lisa, I'm sorry, I didn't mention the number one because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to mention.
That's fine. Fine. Louise did it.
Yeah, no, it's published in the bookseller, isn't it? Yeah, the list. Yeah.
I'm just behind in my reading, as
always.
Actually, I was going to ask, well, Stu Cummins has dropped a question in our Q&A. He says, Louise, congratulations on publication day. He just wants to know, and Lisa, I'll put this to you as well, what makes you think the domestic noir genre is so endearingly popular with readers? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that there's an instant relatability because the settings and the situations are very familiar to most readers. And you know, domestic, the home and the family, you know, that's where you should be at your most secure. And so I think putting that in danger is instantly very dramatic, very compelling. And you know, sort of playing out some of the fears we might have sort of vicariously through the characters. And you know, exactly with the Heights, where you know this relationship between you know a much loved son and his new bestie turns really dark and dangerous and you know eventually tragic. You know, I think that it's playing with people's worst, most primitive fears, because your family is what means the most to you, and your home is where you should be able to close the door and feel safe. And so I think people will never tire of domestic noir. I really don't think they will. I know I won't.
And Lisa?
Yes, what she said. Yes, no, I entirely, yeah, everything she said is correct. I also think there is a sense of, in a world, particularly over the last couple of years, where there don't seem to be any answers to anything. Everyone just seems to be feeling their way through this crisis and just sort of playing it out day by day. And it almost feels like all the grown-ups have left the room in a strange sort of way. And I think there's something really satisfying about a puzzle inside a book where you spend the entire experience of reading the book trying to find answers to questions, and then you get them, and then you can close the book and you know everything. And that is, I think, a very satisfying and comforting feeling for readers at any time, but particularly at the moment, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to say happy publication day.
Thank
and
you.
we're going to sit and watch you answer the rest of your questions.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Me. Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Happy pub day.
Thank you. Thanks again, Lisa. Right, Louise, we've got tons of questions.
Okay.
So bash through as many as I can. Lucy Lim says, you ignited my love of reading after reading The Disappearance of Emily Marr. Who inspires you?
That is just so lovely to hear. Thank you very much, because that's one of my books that I feel was forgotten or underrated, and I'm always mentioning it in the hope that new readers will go back and discover it. So thank you very much. I'm inspired by lots of my contemporaries, so people like Lucy and Tim, and I love Mark Edwards, and I love the sort of the legal authors like Gillian McAllister's one of my favorites, and Sarah Vaughan. But mostly I think I'm inspired by writers, classic writers from the past. So my number one inspiration, I think, for my writing would be Patricia Highsmith, because I really embrace the bleakness in a character and a situation. Sort of, you know, I don't have any qualms about doing that, and I don't mind. All her characters are really dislikable, and all of my characters are really dislikable. I don't think she cared, and I care a little bit, but I don't care too much if people don't like them. But you know, I love the you know, the appalling relationships and terrible situations her characters find themselves in, and the hard drinking, and you know, the parties, and the, you know, the dialogue is incredible. And then, you know, of course, the, you know, the crime dilemmas as well. So yeah, Patricia Highsmith, and also people, you know, who are not writing, who aren't known for writing crime, like Margaret Atwood. Tom Wolfe is a favourite. Yeah, but mainly writers of the past, I would say. And that's, I think partly that's because when I'm writing, I don't want to feel like I'm copying something that I've just read that's contemporary, or being influenced by a trend. I really try to do something different each time. And so I think if you go back to the past, you're less likely to sort of subconsciously drift into a trend chasing scenario, for me anyway, because I'm very easily influenced.
Me too, yes. Slightly too much. Now that you've mentioned champagne, I'm like,
yeah, no. We're very suggestible,
aren't we just?
Yeah.
Chamberlain says, do you write or plan out your characters' idiosyncrasies right at the beginning? Do you have very detailed notes and know more than ever goes into the book about your characters?
No, they develop as I go along. I don't plan their idiosyncrasies. Sometimes I even might insert them quite late in the process, which suggests I don't know them very well at all early on. I'm much more focused in the beginning with the plot and the shape of the book, and then particularly if I'm doing a first person narrator, I want to get the voice right. So I feel like the voice is the character. And then I'll add the other bits. So I quite often only remember quite late in the day that I might need a couple of lines of description of what they look like, because to me it sort of almost doesn't matter. It's much more what's going on in their mind and, you know, the psychology of their behavior. So no, I don't do that, but I know authors do, and I think it's a really good idea. So, you know, I should give it a go sometime, write some character notes.
I realised it towards the end of The Heights that it was very late on in the novel that I actually got a description of what Ellen looked like. I knew that she wore a lot of black, but it was to solidify what she looked like in my mind was very, very late on. And it's like you say, you'd almost explained it in other ways without actually coming out.
Yeah. I mean, with her, actually, she's one of my more distinctive characters because she is based on a kind of, you know, Hitchcock blonde. And so I did picture as a kind of, you know, aging Kim Novak. So I kind of knew what she looked like. And we do mention that her hair is short and bleached blonde, and she's quite sort of punky. So yes, you do get more of an idea of what she looks like. And Kieran, we know is a redhead, and we know he's got bad skin, and we know some of the attributes of Kieran's appearance. But yes, I'm not really sure I could even tell you what Vic looked like. It's, you know, you can sort of picture him for yourself. I think of him as like a sort of James McAvoy sort of look. He's quite cool. Yeah, he'd be wearing a kind of old vintage band t-shirt. Often I know what they wear rather than what their features look like.
Yes. Kate Furnivall says, do you prefer writing these dark themed books? Does it allow you to release emotions that women aren't usually allowed to express? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. But I think we are allowed to express whatever emotions we like. But, you know, it's so easy in fiction because, you know, you never have to really take accountability for the actions of your characters, you know, so they're fictitious. Of course I wouldn't do that or say that or behave in that way. I think it's much more fun to write a dark story where people are behaving badly and have crazy feelings. I think it's, you know, I find it more interesting to write those scenarios. But I have built up to it gradually. So I think in my earlier books, I was conforming more to how I thought a character should be. And, you know, perhaps there were more cliches in the kind of situations and the way people responded to those situations. Whereas now I feel all bets are off. And, you know, I can really go with something that might be dysfunctional or might be unexpected.
Carl Gale would like to know, would you ever consider writing a serial character? Not killer character.
Maybe. I mean, I am. It's interesting talking to Lisa about The Family Upstairs, because I guess my equivalent book, where people ask a lot what happens next, is Our House. And so I have had a, you know, sort of mini conversation with my agent and editor about the possibility of following that up. And now it's going to be a TV drama as well. It's possible that the story might be developed for the screen only rather than a full sequel. So I would consider it, but only where I don't think I would plan a series of books, but I would consider a sequel if I thought that the you know, the story was undeveloped and there was still questions that needed answering and still, you know, proper mileage in the relationships and the crime that they've left behind.
Excellent. Marion Todd would like to know how you come up with those amazing twists.
I don't know. I just don't know. They just occur to me when I'm planning. I usually write a synopsis before I start, and often they'll occur when I'm writing the synopsis. So the process would be I'll start with the themes that I want to explore and the crime that I want to take place. And I'll find a way to create a story. There's usually 3 or 4 obsessions or ideas that I want to write about. And so I'll find a way to sort of weave them all together. And then when I'm thinking through the plotting, often I'll see a way that something very surprising could happen. And sometimes it's in the storytelling itself. It's in the, you know, the narrative structure. And sometimes it's in the character. But there's only so many of those, you know, huge rug pulls that exist in storytelling, I think. And so, you know, there might not always be one in my novels, but there's still a few left that I can use. I mean, it's all classic stuff, actually. You know, it's the unreliable narrator, it's the, you know, the way the story is being delivered by the characters, or it might be a mistaken identity, or it might be, you know, you thought one character was narrating and in fact it's another. I mean, they're all quite classic and often done by Agatha Christie, you know, 100 years before any of us did it. So I'm always looking for a possibility, but I don't think I'd worry if there wasn't one. And I think you know, a really well constructed series of surprises and revelations is just as good as one big one.
I actually thought it was great in The Heights that what is sometimes used as a final twist was actually pretty much at the beginning of the book. You've read the excerpt about it today. We think this person is dead, but he's not really. And actually that comes at the beginning rather than the end.
Yeah, I do like to do that. And I think that part of that is, you know, to hook the reader in a world where, you know, we have got so much choice and, you know, tens of thousands of books, really good books being published every fortnight, and, you know, constant new great stuff on Netflix and iPlayer and Apple TV and all. You know, we've got so much to choose from. I just don't really think that a reader would stick with a book that didn't immediately pull you in and ask questions that you burn to have answered. So I think that's very much a kind of response to, you know, the era we're living in. I think if I was writing 50 years ago, I would expect to be able to ask readers to stay with me in a, you know, just a very meandering, linear sort of story. But now I feel like I have to give so much value for money because the competition is so fierce and there's just so many talented writers out there.
And as much as it is a very crowded marketplace, it's lovely to see that the people with the talent are being given the opportunity.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are so many great books that don't become successful, but because the author is talented, I just have faith that it will happen one day. But yes, I mean, it's great when you look at the top 10 and you know that all of those books are fantastic books by really hardworking, super talented authors. I mean, that's a really good feeling, I think, for all of us, readers and writers, when you know, I've never really felt envious of other writers' success, because I just, you know, my view is, if I would put my name to that book and be proud of it, then, you know, my God, it's fantastic that, you know, this book is being read, because you do get the occasional one that isn't so good and has been hyped, and you know, is number one for ages and ages, and you just think, oh, you know, time for another one.
Yes, let's move on.
Yeah.
Laura Pickett would like to know, do you enjoy writing unlikable characters better than?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I answered that, but in another question a little bit. I love it. I love writing, and I don't necessarily set out to make them dislikable, by the way. I like them, but often their actions make them unlikable. And yeah, I really enjoy it. I love it. I hope that even if they are dark and dislikable, there are some little nuggets in their psychology that you can still connect with, even if you're not rooting for them. Because they're lovely people.
about Ellen was, she was almost, I feel bad saying this, I could totally sympathise with Ellen, and I have a 2-year-old son, so he's nowhere near going to sixth form and getting in with the bad crowd or anything like that, but I could understand her position. And I felt like she was sort of the most extreme version of what my neuroses would end up being.
Yeah.
How did you get into Ellen's mindset? Because it is so extreme.
It is extreme. And there's actually, I was saying to Tim that, I identify with Vic, the cool one. But actually there is a lot of me in Ellen. And, the neurotic parenting just defines our age. I mean, it's very unusual to find a cool parent now. Everyone's overprotective. And lockdown hasn't really helped because we've been homeschooling as well. So we're teachers as well as parents. We're best friends. We're taking on every role. And, my experience of parenting in South London has been hugely ambitious parents who are sitting side by side with their kids, even into their teenage years, helping them with schoolwork and projects and pushing them forwards, the so-called sharp-elbowed parents. And I'm sure that, I would be considered that as well, though none of us think of ourselves in that way. So she's a product of the age. But the other thing is that, the anxiety, and which again, a lot of parents feel. We're just so worried about our kids because, we're bombarded constantly in the media with this idea that they'll never afford their own home. They'll have 25 jobs where we've had 3. They won't give us grandchildren because because of the climate issues, they don't want to bring children into the world. They're going to just have these sort of miserable lives, and so it does make you feel very anxious. And that's partly why I used the vertigo element, the high place phenomenon, for Ellen, because I wanted a kind of dramatic sort of representation of her anxiety, and that's what that is. And I actually do suffer from that same condition myself, which I touched on in the reading, where you don't feel dizzy or sick like with vertigo, but you have the compulsion to jump if it's an open high place. So I was talking about this last night at a table at dinner, and 2 of us out of 10 have this condition. You're absolutely fine if it's windows, water ceiling, windows, but if it's the top of a lighthouse or a cliff edge, or even a bridge where the barrier's quite low, you get an intrusive thought that you could lose control and jump. And I've always had it, and I thought it would be a great one for Ellen to have to deal with, particularly when her nemesis is spends most of his life on his roof terrace of this really tall building. So yeah, she's I found it easy to connect with her anxiety and neurosis.
Yeah, and I think it's the high place phenomenon is a great metaphor for the anxiety that she feels as a parent, and then everything kind of comes true that she was worried about as well. Vanessa Edwards in the chat, Vanessa says, I always thought everyone had that condition. I'm fine if screened off, but definitely would have that urge if not.
Oh no, it's not that. It's I think it's about 1 in 5 or 6. I mean, that's quite common, but no, more people don't have it than do have it. And it's not, it's not having that kind of perfectly rational fear of, being on a cliff edge and you might get blown off. It's not that. It's an intrusive thought that says to you, jump. And you're not depressed or suicidal. You want to live, but it's a kind of strange, intrusive thought. And some people get it when they're driving on a motorway. They'll get the thought that what would happen if I lost control and wrenched the steering wheel into the central reservation. I mean, it's
I've heard people
obviously
say,
crazy.
they want to break the glass on the tube.
Oh, yes.
Or I want to open the door on an aircraft. That was a really terrifying
Yes,
one that I
that's
heard.
exactly the same thing. It's a self-destructive urge. It's an intrusive thought, and in its mildest and more comic form, I had it yesterday when I was crossing Tower Bridge. I had the urge to throw my bag into the Thames, and it's, why would I do that? It would, the pain in having to cancel the bank cards, live my life without my phone. Try and get my keys recut. Why would you do that? It's this really strange self-destructive urge, but luckily I haven't ever acted on it.
Well, there's plenty of people saying very, very similar things in the chat, so you're among
Yeah.
friends.
Oh, good. Well, they'll really connect with Ellen then, because she has these urges.
Absolutely. Keith Young says you always seem to spend a vast amount of time reading other people's books. How do you find the time for writing?
Oh my God. Well, I'm actually one of the worst readers, and I really feel guilty for not reading as many books as I'd like to, particularly new authors or mid-list authors who I really want to break out, and a quote can really help. So that's probably my greatest source of guilt in my life, is not reading as much as I should. Yeah, I don't really have that much time for writing, to be honest. I mean, there are times when I'm squeezing it in and it's like, a pleasurable hobby. And because the rest of the job is so immense now, where, we're doing lots of events and social media, and, there's all the boring admin that we all have to do, and there's meetings. So it does feel sometimes like, oh, I've got 2 hours tomorrow morning. I'm going to turn off my phone, I'm going to close the door, and I'm going to get back to my novel. And it's like a joy. But what I find that I have to do is, set aside like, a chunk of time and just say, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to be available for anything else. And to get things finished, because I'm very good at starting, but I'm not so good at finishing.
Did lockdown help with that? Because I saw in the acknowledgements that you'd written most of the Heights during lockdown. So was that help, or was it just more went into virtual rather than real?
Yeah, no, I had more time. I definitely had more time because I wasn't socializing or seeing my family or anything. So I had loads more time. I also needed it to keep myself sane. So bizarrely, writing about someone who's, got a sort of very tentative grip on sanity, I found kept me sane. And I also really enjoyed, imposing the structure of the story. Both the novel itself and Ellen's story, the book within the book, I really found that very therapeutic during a chaotic time, that Lisa was talking about, where, we just don't know what's going on from one day to the next. So it was a wonderful job to have during these times. I thought it was really, and I had lots more time to write, and I really tried to take advantage of that.
Great. I do have one last question. Did you do a lot of research into campaigns? So one thing that features in The Heights is Ellen's campaign to get Kieran locked up longer for the crime that he's committed. Did you do a lot of research into that?
Not really. I mean, I've always followed that sort of social justice press over the years and been aware, there was a real heyday, I think, in the sort of 90s and the noughties, where newspapers like The Sun, when they still had enormous amounts of power and influence, could take a criminal case and, sort of turn it around in that sort of campaign. So it was more my memory of that. And I didn't really need to delve that deeply because it was, it was quite a small section of the book. So I did a little bit of Googling, but not that much. I could remember a lot of that sort of thing, and that tabloid speak and the way those issues are presented. I could just, I grew up with all of that in the 80s and the 90s. So it felt very natural. Great,
thank you for that. Well, your launch has come to an end, Louise, I'm sorry to say.
Oh my goodness.
Bye.
It's been so much fun. I wish I could buy everyone a drink who's in the audience, and we could stand in a hot room together. We'll do that next time.
Breathing on one another.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to remind the audience that you can enter the competition to win a bundle of Louise's books by emailing baytales20@gmail.com with the heights in the subject line, answering what is Ellen's occupation. Oh, one last question before I go. I have to ask this. Are you allowed to tell us what's next, Louise?
Yes, I will. It hasn't got a title, but it's a kind of Barbara Vine inspired book that is set partly in the present day and partly in the 90s. And again, I think that's a reaction to present times. I really felt the need to go back to a simpler time. And I also needed to go back to a simpler time because of technology. I needed to go pre-mobile phone for this crime to work. So yeah, it's a I think, fabulous deception idea. And I just can't wait to see if people guess. Because there is a twist in this next one, yeah. So yeah, it's going really well, and I'm loving writing it, and hopefully that will be out next year.
Oh, so we've only got 12 months to wait. Louise, thank you so much for choosing Bay Tales to run your virtual launch and for joining us tonight. And huge congratulations on publication of The Heights. It's a great read. I'd also like to thank Simon Buick behind the scenes, Lisa Jewell, TM Logan, and thank you to everybody in the audience. Do stay with us once Louise and I have disappeared, because there's a slide at the end for our Twitter handle. So if you're not already following us, we may have some very exciting news concerning Simon and Schuster and some of their authors, which will be coming very soon. But the final word, Louise, congratulations. May The Heights do ridiculously well, because it absolutely deserves to. Thank you very much for joining.
Oh, and thank you so much. You've been a fantastic host, and it's just been lovely to have our special guests and to know that everyone's there celebrating with me. It's just been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
I think we better go and pop some champagne.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.